Hey everyone, today we are turning this into this. I wanted to create a survival garden that was gonna feed my family if something were to happen. When you grow food like this, it is so nutritious, way better than anything you get at the store. At the end, I'll share how much I spent on this garden. You won't believe it. We're gonna start with taking these old pieces of wood, putting them into the ground to decompose instead of burning and just releasing it. We're gonna use that fertility to help our garden grow. We're gonna have raised beds in here, row crops, everything in between. Let's go. So typically I wouldn't have used an excavator to do this type of work. I was cleaning out the ponds for irrigation that I needed to deal with. So I had the excavator, I had hours left on it on the rental. So I decided just to bury this extra wood I had lying around, creating like an in-ground hugelkultur. The wood will break down over time and give me extra added fertility. So why not? Once the area was level, I decided to add even more fertility by adding local compost. I was able to buy 7 yards of organic certified chicken manure process. It wasn't fully decomposted, so it's pretty hot, but it didn't matter for me. This is exactly what I needed and this garden needed. It was a lot of work moving around all that compost, 7 yards, and my little dumper could only hold about 5 cubic feet per run. You can do the math. I was able to use a drone to do some quick time lapse and showing how I was spreading it all apart. Once I was able to dump it all, my next step was to rake it, spread it around evenly as best as I could. The most important step of this entire operation was the broad forking. So I was able to go into the ground, and using this powerful broad fork, just with my hand power, I was able to slightly till the soil, try not to mix the soil horizons, and blend in that compost into the soil. I was able to borrow this broad fork from a neighbor. They're about like $200. This, hands down, was my favorite and best tool for this entire project. It allowed everything to happen. This ground, you can't even imagine how hard and compacted it was. I had to put all my weight in these tines. I must have lost like 5 pounds doing this garden. It took me about 8 hours straight of broad forking to do the entire garden. So it was done over 3-4 days. I work full time, so I wasn't able to, just dedicate my full time to this. This was a part-time garden that I was building into survival garden. I had the vision in mind, but I just had to keep going. Once I was done with the broad forking, I was able to borrow a little tiny rototiller. It only took me 10 minutes to rototill everything once I figured out how to use it. And once everything was spread out, the next step was to create the rows and then move the dirt from the walking path, which is about 1 foot long, into the beds. So that raised them up. That left a divot, and I wanted to fill that up with wood chips. I started the first 2-3 rows with cardboard underneath, and I quickly realized, I don't have enough cardboard for this. The cardboard is gonna just break down pretty quickly, so I just doubled down on wood chips. So today I'm working on raised beds. Cedar planters gave me these corner pieces that I used to create this raised bed. They even give you one of these little nifty things to drill in. These were reclaimed aspen. They're like $4 a piece. So it ended up working out really well and cheap. Overall, I had under $50 per raised bed, 4x8, which is dirt cheap. And these are large, 18 inches tall raised beds. All right, I am gonna brace the middle sections of these pieces. It came with a kit. Sturdy, love it. The other key that I had building these raised beds was the sawdust material that I was able to get. It was $1 a yard. What made it possible was the local lumber mill throws this stuff away. They just keep massive piles of all their discarded wood. So that's where I was able to get massive deals. And you can see me here moving all that sawdust material. I filled up half of it, and it's gonna break over time. Otherwise, they just get too expensive to fill a 4x8 with really good soil. So I added compost on top. That was my first mistake. I added too much compost and sawdust below. I wouldn't do that again. I'd mix it in with topsoil, which is what I should have done, and it's what I did in the rows. Lesson learned. It killed everything coming up. All right, everybody. So we're now putting in the edge fence around the whole garden. It's gonna be 6 feet high. It's gonna look nice once we get it done. So you can see the rows are done. They look fantastic. We're gonna get 29-degree weather, kill all the tomato plants I got in there, so hopefully the frost cloth will hold up. I'm just gonna get working away. Let's go. So what I'm trying to do here is every 8 feet, put a fence post. And then I got a neighbor come in at the end of this week and with a skid steer and an auger, and we'll dig up all the holes. We are getting there with our garden. It's taking a while. This is realistically how long it'll take you to make a garden, maybe a month or two. So if a survival situation happens, think about how long this is going to take for you to build this. All right, we are almost done with the garden. We're going to give you a quick update. We're getting the fencing put up. It's looking fantastic. Without fencing, this garden would get nuked by deer and animals. So that was super important. Going into it, I knew I wanted to get a nice creative fence that was going to be cheap but look great. So I used welded wire with aspen wood, and then the 4x4s were pine wood I got from the mill, and those were like $7 a piece. So it ended up being pretty cheap to do the entire fence given the quality of it. I will have to probably replace it in 10 years, but I'm putting in a game fencing for the entire property, so it won't matter at that point. My neighbor was super kind to have a skid steer with an auger and help me out. He knocked it out in like 15 minutes, which was fantastic because this would have taken me 10 hours at least to dig them by hand to the depth that we needed. Measuring was pretty easy and just pounding it, not too hard. One of the harder steps was getting the welded wire stretched. We figured out a few different creative ways to do that. We put 2 pieces of wood on opposite sides, and then we used little ratchet straps to pull it, and it made a halfway decent fence. Then we used the cross bracing, the aspens, to secure it into place. So today we are going to be planting corn. I got this from Lance's garden, that video that went viral. He's been growing this variety, Mandan Bride, for over 40 years. And you can see just the colors, it's just fantastic. And it makes really good polenta. So one of the tips I learned from Lance is you keep what you're going to plant in the ground in the cob itself, it stores better. These seeds can remain viable for a very long time. It's beautiful. And then here is our second corn. This is called Hopi Red. It's a flower corn. Each one of these has over 300-400 seeds, so this is plenty for my small garden. Beautiful corn, red polenta. So you just grind it on the mill, and that's what we're gonna grow these for. Nice survival crop. And what's cool about growing Mandan Bride with Hopi Red is they have different pollinating times, so you don't have to concern yourself, although I probably will still cut some tassels. That way I can keep the seeds pure for next year. So we're gonna set up 2 rows halfway through this. So I got a stake that's about 16 inches apart. So start with our corn, plant it in. Then I know the next one is coming in between halfway through that. And then the next one coming here. Pretty simple. I'm gonna keep doing this the whole way through. And then I'm gonna plant squash every 4 foot. Then we're gonna have the beans. I'm gonna plant 2 weeks later so that doesn't interfere with the corn coming up. The corn needs to outgrow the coming beans, otherwise it's gonna bring them down. We're gonna plant a ton of squashes, melons, all curcubits in the lower layer. And then we are gonna do beans 2 weeks later once the corn has emerged. All right, so this garden took me about 60 days to finish from beginning to end. There's still some little final touches I gotta do, but well, whatever, I'm getting tired. So let's just see what it all came out to. So this is the entrance. Put a nice little door, keep the deer away. Welcome. So first we got a little arch overhead. I have cucumbers and peas coming out. These guys are kind of growing a little slow. I don't know if I used the best soil, which kind of screwed me. I used organic soil, but it's kind of doing this to the plants. Someone can tell me what that is. So I added more topsoil as second beds. So I ended up having a lot of extra slats for the fence. And so I ended up just putting more raised beds together. I did the math before. I thought these were closer to like $50, $60 a piece. And they turned out to be like $36 in wood a piece. So I'm under 40 bucks with the hardware on each one of these. So they're actually really cheap. This one I used topsoil, organic, and plants are coming out great. These are cucumbers you guys can see coming up the center. My goal with this whole garden was to produce as many calories as possible. This is about a 50 by 60 square foot garden. So whatever that total adds up, just like what, 2,700 square feet. So my first row here, I got blackberries. So this is gonna be my berry row. And I used this on purpose. The sides, I chose to put perennials like berries over there as well to kind of give it wind protection. So these are coming up. It's hot. And I got onions growing. Onions grow really well with raspberries. So until the raspberries get big, it's a good year to do onions. I have probably like 200 to 300 onions. And then I have hardy kiwis up on the sides. And so I'm growing these guys out to cover the fencing. So grow it as a trellis. Whatever doesn't grow well this year, I am going to, I already had some dying over here. Whatever doesn't grow well this year, I am going to replace with grapes next year. And some of these is just bad water, like I need to get water to that guy. The next rows, I have 3 full rows of potatoes. I got purple potatoes, Colorado russet potato, which is a high producer here, and this other variety called Binjet or something, I can't pronounce it. And then over here, crossing the rows, I did 4 rows of 3 sisters. So I got squash in the center, and I did about 4 plants every 4 feet. So you can see that. And then I have corn. And then what I did is I have 2 varieties of corn, Mandan Bride, and it is a multicolor. It's like a really beautiful corn. And then the other half here I did is a corn called Hopi Pink. And it is a fast growing corn. It is very tough, this corn. So the Hopi Pink, I've heard nothing but great things about. And that's also a flower corn. And the Hopi Pink flower is done flowering at 75 days. And the Mandan Bride over here starts around that time. So I just gotta be consistent, make sure there's no cross-pollination. I'm gonna try to keep both seeds. The reason I grew these in blocks is so that they're wind pollinated. You don't wanna grow corn in rows, long rows like this. It would just not work out well. And here, as we're coming near the end, these are tomatoes I got growing. These have been raging. They do need some water, so they look a little sad right now. I was given both lettuce, a tray of lettuce, and a tray of tomatoes. I got about 30 tomatoes. So I just planted them here, and we'll see how they're doing, but they're looking great. I've eaten so much lettuce, and I'm not really a lettuce kind of guy, so they've been so delicious, and it's been great. We're growing lettuce in between the crops. And then the row that started this garden row is all cut flowers for my wife. She used to run a cut flower business. And early this spring, she read an article. It said postpartum women that garden have a 30% reduction in postpartum depression. So my wife asked me to build our garden. We started with 1 row, and soon it turned into 10 rows, but it was all worth it. Final row here, I have my gooseberries, you can see. So this is just gooseberries with some red currants over on the back end and some blackberries. So I planted some onions here too. They're a little bit smaller. These corner pieces I got from Cedar Planter. They were generous enough to send me a few. I did another video on them where I did a surprise of them, and then I had 2 other ones I kept. I wanted to grow some flowers. So these are my cut flowers here and on the edge as well. Not everything has to be food, but we'll see. Maybe next year I change my mind. And over here, just did some transplanting. What I wanted to try with this raised bed, this is a 4x8. This half over here is with just cover crop. I want to just condition the soil as best as possible this year. I want to see the results. And then this I just planted with some starts I had going. Got some peppers, cilantro, a few different things here. It just gets raging hot here. I gotta water more consistently. And I got arugula coming up here. But then again, I used too much compost in the soil, and I feel like that's what kind of did these beds in. Look at my poor squash, they're just getting nuked. They don't even grow. So one of the questions people are probably gonna be wondering is, okay, it looks great, but how much did you spend? You probably dropped an arm and a leg. Everything was cheap and locally available. The compost I got 7 yards for $350 delivered. So that was one of my bigger expenses. The most expensive part was the woven fence. That was about $600 to do the entire fence perimeter around. The wood, dirt cheap. I spent probably like $500 on, including everything, and that gave me 2 extra beds on top of that. You know, I'm predicting 300 to 500 pounds of potatoes, corn. I don't know. This is my first time growing corn, to be honest with you. So I wanted to show you guys, if hits the fan, this is a survival garden. This is how quick it takes. It's about 60 days. You know, I did it on the weekends and after work hours or early in the day. You know, I have kids I gotta watch as well. So the big thing I want to show is that anybody can do this. So crunching the numbers, I figured out exactly how much I spent. It was about $1,547 to build this. I'll put down below in the description exactly what everything was broken down into. If you live in an area where you don't have pest predators, then you don't have to worry about these 6-foot fencing. For me, it's a must. We get herds of deer here that would wipe me out in one afternoon. Just figure that into your costs. We're gonna definitely get our money's worth out of this garden. I think even just this year, between the potatoes and the tomatoes, and my family isn't gonna eat toxic that you buy at the store. I hope you guys enjoyed the tour from beginning to end. It was a lot of labor, it was a lot of love. I'm super glad I did it. Would I do it again? Absolutely. Would I change things around? So far, no, but we'll see how the grow season goes. I'll keep putting out periodic updates. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.